I'm Craig, and today for the Surfboard Guide, we're going to check out the Black Vulture 2 by Chilli Surfboards. So a while ago we put out the initial thoughts on the Black Vulture 2, and since then we've surfed a little bit more and got to know the board a little bit better. So you might be familiar, there was originally a Black Vulture, which came out about 2 to 3 years ago by Chilli. Super fun board. I took one to Sri Lanka for a few weeks, absolutely loved it. There wasn't much that it couldn't do. And they've just brought out the Black Vulture 2 off the back of that with a few changes and kind of aimed, they say, to smaller and more average waves. So looking over the Black Vulture 2, it has a slightly higher wide point than most boards. So what it does is it holds width through the front of the board. So you're going to have a lot of width under your chest, making paddling in that really, really easy. The other thing they've done, which they've changed from the original Black Vulture, the Black Vulture had this little semi-flyer, and they've just bumped that off to kind of keep a straighter and nicer kind of rail line that is a lot easier to turn, or nicer to turn through the water. And then flipping it over, it's pretty simple through the bottom of the Black Vulture 2. There's a single concave that runs through the bottom. It's not too deep, and they say there's a really light double through the fins that just goes out the tail, but I can barely feel it. You can just feel the stringers kind of raise there, so there's a little bit of double, but it's just a really gentle, simple concave, and it'll just keep water going through the board really, really nicely. So this is the stock 510, and it's 510, 19 3/4, 2.5, and exactly 31 litres. So I normally ride like kind of 30 to 31 in the shortboard, so it's pretty close to my kind of shortboard volumes. Yeah, so I've been riding this for a while. Absolutely love the Black Vulture. It was one of my favourite boards. I took it on this trip to Sri Lanka. I took 3 or 4 boards, but it was like the only board I rode most of the time. When the waves were small, pumping, whatever, the thing was absolutely epic. And the Black Vulture 2 has not disappointed either. Funnily enough, when you look at the Chilli website, it says it's designed for very small and average waves. I thought it was for average waves, but I kind of wanted waves when I surfed the Black Vulture 2 not to be too small. So I think, you know, I'm getting older, pretty heavy. When waves are really, really small, I want those really, really like grovelly little boards that just, you know, full of foam, really flat, quad fin and easy to surf. But when it hit, say, kind of about the waist high range, that's when this thing came into its own. Waves didn't need to be pumping. You know, I surfed in some pretty average conditions. I also surfed in some pretty pumping conditions. We've got some footage you'll see. Waves were fun. They weren't pumping. It wasn't average. It was kind of in the middle, but it was exactly when I would ride the Black Vulture 2. Yeah, so the Black Vulture 2 was super easy to paddle, and it was really, really easy to surf. What I really enjoyed about it was living in Sydney, we get a range of waves from pretty average to pretty pumping, not pumping that often. But where I actually kind of felt this sat was boards that are kind of really popular, I think, around like, you know, city beaches and stuff where the waves are not always that great. People like shortboards in that kind of step down shortboard range. And that's where I actually kind of thought this sat, you know, a board that you want for that kind of 2 to, you know, maybe almost 6 foot range, but you might be kind of keen to ride a twin or 2+1. That's where this thing absolutely, like it sat and it did really well. The volume and width up the front made it really easy to paddle, get into average waves and kind of plane across flat and weak sections. But its outline is still quite performance, you know, more towards a shortboard, especially through that back end of the board, that made you could do all the kind of surfing you would in a performance shortboard, and it didn't kind of like suffer or lag when waves are a little bit bigger and a little bit better. In the Black Vulture 2, I tried out a variety of fins. They recommend that you ride the Black Vulture 2 as a twin plus one, 2+1. So this is the MR twin set by FCS. I started with this and I finished with this. So I also tried like the Chloe Andinos, the AMs, and the Mick Fannings and a bunch of stuff. Felt okay, but it definitely wanted to be a 2+1. The twin sets now are just so epic. They have the perfect kind of combination of looseness and drive. You know, they're not too slidey, and this was perfect. When waves were average, it had a nice kind of release that made the board really fun, and I felt like I could surf, like do some half decent surfing. And when waves were better, it had, you know, all the hold and drive that you get from a thruster set, but still that nice release through turns. It just made surfing a little bit different, a little bit more interesting. Yeah, this is the MR FCS2 set, but if you ride the board in futures, try the T1s. They're pretty much the same fin, similar outside, similar flex, and will give a very similar feel. Yeah, overall, the Black Vulture 2 was pretty epic. Like I said, the Black Vulture was one of my favorite boards. Like I took it on a trip, loved it. I rode it at home, everywhere. I'll put a link in the review to the previous review so you can kind of compare the both. And the Black Vulture 2 didn't disappoint. Very similar kind of board, you know, a really fun board that can handle kind of waves 2 to 6 foot. Really easy to surf. Probably for anyone from like a intermediate, you know, just above a beginner, someone who's maybe getting onto more of a performance shortboard off something like a little bit bigger and a little bit floatier, through to, you know, a very advanced surfer. There's not much this couldn't do, and it kind of catered for a whole range of people. Look, overall, absolutely love the Black Vulture 2. I've actually had it for a long time. I was surfing it for a while, went to the review, got injured, then just kind of slowly got back into surfing. But it hasn't been bad. I've been enjoying riding it for like the last 5 or 6 months. So, you know, great board for summer, and I think also a great board for people that live in like, you know, city conditions, where you kind of get like a mix of, you know, not amazing waves most of the time, and you want something that's going to perform in, you know, waves kind of waist to overhead. The Black Vulture 2 does it all. Look, overall, hopefully get a chance to check one out. I really loved it, and hopefully get a chance to check it out too. Thanks so much for watching.